There are 3 volumes in Darwin's manuscripts and papers from the Darwin Archive at Cambridge University Library, with notes from his research on bloom on leaves and fruit. This was the book Darwin was working on when he died, aged 73. His son Francis explained, "His researches into the meaning of the bloom or waxy coating found on many leaves was one of those inquiries which remained unfinished at the time of his death. He amassed a quantity of notes on the subject." Indeed, there is a large quantity of notes that survive. 308 have been catalogued. The Darwin Online project has transcribed 284 of these for the first time. The OED defines bloom as the delicate powdery deposits on fruit like the grape, plum, etc., when freshly gathered, and on certain plant leaves. Today, this waxy covering is called the cuticle. Like almost all of Darwin's research projects, including his theory of evolution itself, the research went on behind the scenes for decades while earlier work was still in the foreground. The first dated note is from 31st of March 1863, and the last is the 7th of April 1882. Darwin died 12 days later on the 19th of April. The book was never published by Darwin, nor his son Francis, who was his assistant and intended co-author in the observations and experiments in this study. In 1886, Francis did publish a small part of the research that he had undertaken on the relation between the bloom on leaves and the distribution of the stomata, published in the Journal of the Linnaean Society of London. Darwin drafted 4 title suggestions for the unpublished book. The Protection of Glaucous Leaves, The Protection of Leaves by Bloom by Charles Darwin, The Uses of the Waxy Secretion or Bloom on Plants by Charles and Francis Darwin, and On the Protection of Leaves from Water by Charles Darwin. There are 2 introductory drafts, where Darwin states that the first point to ascertain was whether the removal of the bloom or pruina or waxy secretion would injure leaves in any fruit or leaves in any degree. He explains he was much struck with the sensitive plants as Drosera and Ionia not affected by stream of water, and later came to the conclusion that if repelling water was one of the uses or effects of bloom, there were probably many others, or whole subject seems worth investigating. The methods of testing were typically wide-ranging, including dripping, sponging, spraying, syringing, squirting, wetting, dipping, waving in liquids of varying temperatures, dusting with chalk or pumice, and shaking the fruits and leaves to determine the degree of absorption, adherence, and repellence, and the degree of damage the action might cause. Various stimulants were introduced to the specimens, and the results closely tabulated with assistance from Leonard and Horace Darwin, in addition to Francis. The age of the specimens, the places where they were exposed were also considered. This was typical Darwin thoroughness. Darwin wanted to know if bloom was a product of natural selection, as it conferred some advantages to the plants either at the present time or had done in their evolutionary past. He thought it straightforward that bloom was adapted to prevent water lodging on the leaves, and that I soon came to the conclusion that if repelling water was one of the uses or effects of bloom, there were probably many other, and whole subjects seemed worth investigating. And his experiments had indeed suggested many other adaptations. We shall see many uses, it seemed to me, to protect from insects, from evaporation, water plants, from water, salt water, farm, plain water, from excess of light, color of leaves changed by removal of bloom, parasitic fungi. Browsing through Darwin's notes reveals more than his experimental records. They often record snapshots of his daily life. For example, Darwin would walk out to his hothouse and examine or experiment with some plants. He would then go for his walk around the sandwalk. Afterwards, he would stop by the hothouse again to see if there were any changes to his plants, and then he would return to his study and jot down the notes now transcribed here.